First thing, who the hell am I? My name is Hugh Hancock. I am best known for founding a site called Machinima.com, which subsequently became the Machinima channel. And I have been a filmmaker using the technology called Machinima, which I'll talk about in a moment, for 20 years now. In that time, I have been around the world of games, and specifically the world of gaming culture, and the weird and wonderful developments that crop up out of this technology and out of these IPs that aren't necessarily part of the mainstream business of gaming, and hence often get trampled underfoot because they don't have a direct monetary value attached to them, or because they're a very new concept and our law simply doesn't have the tools quite to handle them yet. So I may have just spoiled my talk there. The talk is, of course, IP law, friend or foe to gamers, and from what I'm talking about today, I'm afraid it is mostly going to be foe. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through 3 examples of really interesting, innovative pieces of art, or really useful technologies that have come out of the world of gaming that are not games themselves, and have mostly been developed as a result of people being enthusiastic about these IPs. And then I'm going to talk about how their legal status ends up either being incredibly fragile or sufficiently fragile in one case that it has basically squashed the art form altogether. I'm mostly working here from the principle that the fundamental intent of all IP law is to help promote innovation, help promote new creation, new creativity in artistic and other quote-unquote useful sciences space. And it is my standpoint that, largely because things have been moving so fast in the last 10 years, an awful lot of very promising developments have been either hindered or almost squashed. So, my first example is the example that I am probably best known for myself, which is the art form of machinima. Now, machinima is, at its base, the idea of making a film using a computer game, or within a computer game world. Now, why the hell would you want to do this? Well, it's really very simple. If you want to make Lord of the Rings, for example, you have 2 choices. You can acquire drones to fly around the landscape, you can get loads of costume for all your actors, you can get hundreds of actors, you can get dozens of cameras, each of these things costing tens of thousands of pounds. You can hire an army of special effects people to create monsters that don't exist in the real world. You can find the funding for all of this, which is in the hundreds of, well, you can do it these days. You can do a short, limited scope fantasy film for under £1 million. Just if you call in a lot of favours. It's huge, expensive, time-consuming, very, very difficult to do. Or you can use World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft has a built-in world. It's not photorealistic, but then neither are Pixar's films, and they're doing pretty well. It has hundreds of locations which you can shoot your actions in. It has a way to create an infinite number of characters. You don't need to hire anyone other than voice actors to do this. You can use the characters in the game. You can use the animations in the game to do an awful lot of your action. This thing is built to create gigantic, spectacular fantasy set pieces. Now, this is obviously nowhere near what the computer game was originally designed for, but it turns out that by using something like World of Warcraft, or as it started out, Half-Life or Quake 2, or these days some of the Call of Duty games for war films, or even Minecraft, you can create these amazing films that you could not, even in 2014, and I am currently shooting this on a camera which George Lucas would have given his left testicle for back in 1993 or so. This thing is absolutely incredible. The advances in filmmaking have been astonishing, but still, Machinima represents an absolutely unique opportunity. Unfortunately, it crashes squarely into the barrier of IP law, and this is what happened to Machinima when it first became big. Back in 2002, 2003, I founded Machinima.com in 2000. By 2001, 2002, starting to get a lot of mainstream appeal. We're getting articles in the New York Times, articles in Entertainment Weekly. Serious companies were starting to take note of this, including the one who eventually bought Machinima.com from me. Some really talented directors were starting to come up this way. People like, for example, Terran Gregory and Ezra Ferguson, who made a film called The Return in World of Warcraft. And this was so successful that there was actually interest from a television company who were very serious about turning this thing into a TV series. And it would have been a really, really good TV series. And then it hit the IP law thing, because there is no provision for creating a film using these virtual sets of these computer games. In the real world, of course, we also have IP problems with landscapes, with people's likenesses, and so on and so forth. But for example, it's perfectly legal to shoot a film in Edinburgh, where I currently am, or in a lot of boroughs of London, if there's no bylaws against it. If you're shooting from public land, you don't need to get the clearances for every single IP owner of every single building that might be in shot. There are protections for accidentally shooting, by which I mean shooting a film, bystanders, and so forth. This stuff is all pretty worked out, and it means that a lot of the time you can make a film without such cumbersome IP restrictions that you're simply barred from it. Not so in Machinima. Imagine if anytime you wanted to shoot a film anywhere, you needed to get the approval of all the IP owners for everything that could possibly be in the shot. Every single building, that you need to get the approval of the architect. Every single person you shoot, you not only need to get the approval of the person, you need to get the approval of the designer of all of their clothes, you need to get the approval of the person who holds the design right for literally any prop that is shown in the film, whether we're talking about a garbage can or a car. This is the situation that Machinima found itself in. Of course, all this IP was owned by the same company, but that company had absolutely no vested interest in providing artists the ability to express their art. And what happened was a number of very talented creators bubbled up, like Ezra and Terran, and then suddenly hit this glass ceiling of we can make these amazing films. They are phenomenal. They are doing things that you cannot do in any other medium. This is genuinely a new art form, which is doing unique, innovative stuff and empowering a new generation of filmmakers to compete directly with Hollywood in terms of the type of stories they can create. You can make a Marvel movie using Machinima. You can't make a Marvel movie any other way, really, unless you have the $100 million required. And yeah, we can't do this because we can't get the rights to even distribute these things, even for free. The distribution was for a very long time a grey area. A guy called Phil Rice made an amazing movie called Male Rescue Etiquette, which got over 5 million hits on YouTube because you just put it up and no one really noticed until it was very, very popular. It was made in The Sims 2. It didn't use any of The Sims 2's story elements at all. It just used The Sims 2 as a movie creation tool. And he got a call from Larry King, who is a huge, huge talk show host in the US, saying, "I really like your movie. I'd like to show it. I'd like to invite you on the show." Now, this is how careers start. I mean, this was the canonical big break. Unfortunately, he got in touch with Electronic Arts. He said this thing has happened. Electronic Arts went, no. Now, it might sound like I'm being unfair to Electronic Arts here, or, I'm being your standard hippie creative who doesn't understand the meaning of the term profit. And actually, I think Electronic Arts behaved perfectly rationally. There was no reason for them to allow this random dude who had made a film with their computer game, what's that about, to exploit it. There was no reason for them to pay the money necessary to vet the damn thing, to have someone go through it and check whether there was anything that was going to cast their IP in a negative light, to do the research on what rights they'd be giving away or what potential opportunities they'd be losing in the future, to have their board, get together and meet up and say, right, so it turns out some people make films with this thing. How do we license it? What do we do? What's going on? Who am I? It's a big unnecessary hassle, and they're a games company, not a film company, and they've made this thing that might potentially make them a few $100,000. There's not that much money in Machinima at the Sims 2 level, so why the hell would they let him put this on Larry King? And the end result here is that a creative gets squashed. A really promising, talented person ended up not being able to turn this into a living, into doing this full time and creating films which people would have loved. Now, obviously, one thing that's happened in the recent past as a result of the popularity of other things, not Machinima. Machinima has benefited from this as a side effect, is that computer games companies have started saying, look, okay, we're going to give you a right to distribute videos of our film on YouTube, and you can make money from promoting on YouTube via ads the usual way. And the obvious question is, well, doesn't that solve the problem? And the answer is no. YouTube is a wonderful, wonderful way to monetize, and you can make a genuine business out of it if you release videos very, very frequently. This is absolutely at the core of the way that YouTube works. And unfortunately, if you are making drama, that's just not how drama works. Drama takes ages to make, and therefore the only way to really monetize it is to actually sell the end product. If you look at the economics of the entire thing, you end up something like 100 to 200 times more efficient directly selling your films as opposed to trying to win off ads. That's why you don't see the new Marvel movie released for free on YouTube, basically because the economics don't add up. And so, while it's lovely the games companies are doing this, albeit they're doing it because of Let's Plays, they're not doing it because of Machinima at all, it doesn't solve the problem. Okay, so moving on to a second example. Looks like I only have time for two. So the second example I'm going to use is actually one that's considerably more sketchy in most people's minds. World of Warcraft is obviously a phenomenally successful, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And over the years, it has picked up an enormous number of fans of its various incarnations. And the thing is, well, World of Warcraft is continuously changing. And a lot of people have expressed the desire to go back in time, to go back to the Burning Crusade era or the classic Warcraft era, play it in that way. Other people have said, well, wouldn't it be great if XYZ could be included? Wouldn't it be great if we had something using the Warcraft toolset but a post-apocalyptic world, for example? And these are all the kind of great suggestions that unfortunately are never going to happen because it's not in Blizzard's interests to release classic servers. This has been discussed many, many times. And actually making a new MMO is a phenomenally huge amount of work and a phenomenally huge amount of money, and currently it looks like it's almost impossible to make a profit out of the damn things. However, a number of clever people got into the code of World of Warcraft and reverse engineered it, and so there are now things called private servers. Now, these are not licensed by Blizzard. They are doing things like restoring classic World of Warcraft. They are doing things like, in some cases, creating completely new MMOs that are genuine and massive pieces of art. They are huge, and they are spectacular projects. But they have to fly completely under the radar, because even though most of these people insist that you have to have a World of Warcraft subscription in order to play on their server, they are nonetheless in violation of everything from the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to various copyrights and issues and so on and so forth. And in general, these things have to exist in the same kind of grey area as the Pirate Bay, and that seems a little unfair. Other examples of this, SWG, the Star Wars Galaxies, which recently closed down. There's a project that to create an emulator for this, so that the game can carry on, so that people can continue to enjoy it. And it would be obviously great if new people could come and join this, and this could continue developing and improving this piece of art, which a lot of people poured their lives into, and which a lot of other people are huge, huge fans of, to the point where it's changed their life. Should art really be reliant on the charity and goodwill of people who control the tools that are used to make it? Particularly in the case of Machinima, a lot of Machinima, like Male Restroom Etiquette, is not using the story IP or what we'd consider the brand IP of what they're creating in any meaningful way. They're just using this thing as a tool. And this is an absolutely unique problem to computer games, because with a film, once you've got a DVD, it's not like you can use the DVD of the Avengers to create your own movies. It's just a 2D recording of still frames like this one, played at 25 frames a second. But computer games are different. They contain all the ingredients necessary to be not only a creative product themselves, but also a tool for other people to create. And that is currently just being completely ignored in law. And so any of this innovative, interesting, genuinely culture-advancing work that is being done with these tools is entirely dependent on the goodwill of the IP owner in question, and that seems a little bit off. Well, why is this important? Why can't these guys, if they've got so much talent and so much creativity, just do their own original stuff. And there are two answers. The first answer is potentially the thornier one, which is these people are inspired by the art, by the IP that they are working with. A lot of these people, Ezra and Terran, for example, were inspired by World of Warcraft, by that world, that fictional world, and you can't really control as an artist what you're inspired by. And this goes into the same problems as the problems with fan fiction and all the rest of it. So this is well covered ground. I won't spend too much more time on it. The other issue is that these things are phenomenal tools that mean that you can make things you can't make any other way. I made a feature film, fantasy feature film called Bloodspell, which I made for a grand total of £5,000. It was cost about the same to make the entire feature film, including buying all the kit I needed, doing all the editing, everything, special effects, hundreds of actors. This thing was big. This thing was scale for the first Lord of the Rings film. And I made it for a total cost of equivalent to the filmmaking equipment that I'm making this video with now. Machinima is enormously, enormously empowering, and a lot of these other things are enormously empowering. It's impossible. I'm just going to say, it is outright impossible for a one-man band to make an independent, massively multiplayer online role-playing game without being a billionaire or having the backing of someone with a similar amount of financial clout. You just cannot create a WoW scale massively multiplayer role-playing game as an independent. However, if you are going to use WoW and then create a total conversion of it, as several people have done, or indeed even use many of the WoW models but use it to create a different game world, a different setting, maybe different emphasis, basically a completely different world, a completely different game, as similar to World of Warcraft as, say, Dark Souls is. You can do that using the World of Warcraft technology. Obviously, it is also owned by the game's creators, and that's the line we've got to tread. But currently, it seems that there is no consideration whatsoever for the extent to which the nature of computer games as simultaneously artistic creations and tools ends up with IP law interfering with the original purpose, which is to promote new artistic achievement. There is a lot of new artistic expression, artistic achievement, popular artistic expression, serious artistic expression, serious promissory expression which shows new talents emerging, which is being squashed because we simply don't have the framework to cover it. And that is where I shall end. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture stroke rant.